I really appreciate everybody on behalf of the National Cryptologic Museum Foundation. Welcome to the National Cybersecurity Career Awareness Week. And we have a phenomenal treat for you today as we begin our week-long discussions of the great opportunities within cybersecurity careers. Cyndi Gula is our host, is our speaker this morning, and she is a managing partner of Gula Tech Adventures, which focuses on cyber technology, cyber policy, and most importantly, recruiting more people into the cyber workforce. It is very important. We have lots of openings. If you go to cyberseek.org, you'll see over 500,000 openings. And Cyndi's company is dedicated to helping fill those attributes. Now, Cyndi started out in doing lots of different things in cyber. With Tenable Network Security, which was traded on NASDAQ in 2018. And so that gives her the opportunity to do these other activities. She's vice chair of the Howard County Economic Development Board. And her bachelor's of science is in glass engineering. So maybe we'll hear about this. One of the things we talk about is you don't need a computer science degree to be in cybersecurity. So I don't want to take any more time of Cyndi. So Cyndi, welcome to the National Cryptologic Museum's Foundation Cyber Chats.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm happy to be here. As Mark stated, my degree is in glass engineering science, so I'm a material scientist by schooling. My path into cybersecurity is a little interesting. In 1998, my husband and I started a company for intrusion detection system. At that time, Unix was very new to the public. And so our product actually was written in Unix, where everybody else was using Windows and only understanding Windows. The internet was still quasi growing and becoming more accepted into the public. So pretty much I got to grow up and learn by osmosis. And a lot of people in the security industry today have learned by osmosis. Back in 1998, we didn't even call it cybersecurity. It was information security, information technology, information assurance, but all focusing on this new tool that we had to go international communications. And it was built so fast and so furious with the idea of making those connections. We had to step back and say, wait a minute, this good thing that we've all built could also be used for bad. And when the bad started coming out, how do you fix that? And so the information security field started to grow. We started to figure out how to probe these new software and these new technologies to figure out how they interact and how we can make them do things that they were not intended to do necessarily. And from that, we just kept growing. We had these networks out there. So then we had to make systems to detect what was going on. Then we had to make systems to monitor what was going on. And then we were telling these people who were building these networks, you now have to secure them, run them, and keep learning and learning and learning. So it's like, riding a bike, learning to ride a bike that was already going 55 miles an hour. So there was a lot of learning and churning, but right now, this is the most exciting time to join and get into cybersecurity. I have a presentation that I am going to show you. However, a little bit more on my background. So from 98, we sold our company to a larger company and we learned so much. Again, I'm an engineer by schooling, but we learned about software and hardware and how they work together, how you build networks. Then we started Tenable Network Security, and the big focus there is detecting vulnerabilities, because if you know where you're vulnerable, you have a chance to then be able to patch them, plug them, monitor them correctly, and move on. And a few years ago, all of a sudden, the industry consolidated into this thing called cybersecurity, but it's not a one single thing. And that's what I hope to press upon you, that there's not one thing that is cybersecurity. So cybersecurity, what is it all about? there's no magic path to cybersecurity. And that's the good news, because the good news is there's a lot of opportunities for you to blaze your own trail to get into cybersecurity. But there's a few things you need to understand. You need to understand that the risk of the internet technology, in the same way as you understand the risk to your health. Right now with the national pandemic, we know how to clean our hands, to wash our hands really well, to stay away, social distance. We understand how that danger could impact others if we are not careful about how we act with our personal health. Same thing with driving. Driving, you could potentially, have an accident that hurts and harms somebody else. So you really need to make sure you're doing that well. And then good finances. We're all taught good finances allow you to have the things that you want, to build the life that you want. So all of these things we have been taught. But my articulation is we also need to be taught about good cyber hygiene. What does that mean when we're looking at our vulnerabilities, when we patch our systems, when we use two-factor authentication? All of this information is out there and we've been having it said, but I think as an industry, we're not capturing that personal aspect of what cyber actually means. So I've been, tossing around the idea to pivot it and really talk to people more from the data care side. Medical field pivoted to healthcare. And when they pivoted to healthcare, it was a little bit more personal. I argue the same thing with cyber. Cyber at the end of the day is that data. It's your data. So cyber should be personal to you. You should have a personal responsibility of protecting your data, doing things in such a way that protects other people's data. And if we start talking about cyber in those terms, it's a little easier to digest and understand what your role is in cybersecurity. So if it's data care, it makes it more personal. It makes the idea that this is private, your data should be private. And then you also have this idea of protection. And when you have those three together, it's personal, it's privacy, and it's protection. You build that. That is ultimately what we're talking about when we say cybersecurity. So when you think of cybersecurity, it's not a monolith. I'm going to talk about 4 different, ways to think about cyber and to understand that there's different roles. You don't all have to play the same role. Cyber's a team sport. It has players on offense, players on defense. Sometimes it's more like basketball where you have to play both sides, but you also have referees that call fouls. You have policymakers to make the rules. So you have fans that don't necessarily play, but they understand the rules and they cheer it on and they support it. So keeping all of that in mind, I'd like to go through 4 different ways to think about cyber and in getting into the cyber security as a career. First, we have attackers. Common name might be hackers, but if you think about attackers, it's unauthorized access to a network. But there are good reasons in order to attack network on your own. So you might have nation states. So this is the huge piece that the government's trying to solve right now. Nation states that are attacking, whether they're trying to come in and get secrets, information, anything else that they should not deserve to have. That's a very high level attack that I want a lot of people to get to the point of being and wanting to defend our country in that capacity. But we also have criminals that attack for financial benefit. There's a lot of information out there that could actually be used against you and your data and how people access the information to gain financial benefit. So there's a lot of criminal activity out there. There's political access for sensitive information. We've seen this in previous elections, post-elections. And then moving forward, if you're thinking more of cybersecurity in a data care aspect, what is somebody potentially going to use with that data in the future? And how are they going to weaponize just data against somebody else in the future. So it's really important that we get everybody to understand that we need to have protections around this data so that it makes sure not to be weaponized. We have hijacking of friends' Instagram accounts just for fun, just to post something to say, hey, look at what, so-and-so, or maybe for malicious intent. Either way, it's out there and it's able to do. But why is that? Why are we able to do these things on the internet? And that's what cyber is all about. It's understanding that why of the network being set up the way they are and access. Some people just hack or attack a different network just to prove that you can, just for satisfaction and for gain. And then this is the one that is actually more relevant to cybersecurity as a career, is testing your own network for vulnerabilities. Obviously, it would be authorized, but it's not enabled. So figuring out how you can poke those defenses that is set up to make sure that you are on the track of being secure.
I have a question for you, which kind of relates to what you're talking about. One of the attendees says, is it possible to be 100% protected online?
No, no. Security is one of those things. And that's why it's also so excited to have as a career path, because it's never done. It's forever changing. There's new innovation. It's a cat and mouse and a how to do one or the other. Big thing in cyber that we have to deal with is risk. And when you know the risk that you're taking with the information that is exposed or with the amount of security that you've put into your network or on your computers, it's a constant trade-off, because the best way to be secure online is to unplug your computer from the wall and not be online. That would be really a way to be secure. So that's not a reasonable solution. So how do we get part way there with the balance of the beauty and benefit that we get from the internet? So it's those trade-offs. But one of the things that we're advocating for the next group of people is the creators, is if the creators create software with security in mind and with that care of data, we're going to be a lot closer than we had been in the past when we were just writing software and creating networks to get the job done in order to push the data through on networks so that we could communicate and we could transact and we could do all these wonderful things that are now exposed to us. What we forgot back then is to build it securely. Now we know we need to build it securely and why we need to build it securely. So these creators, the developers of the software or the network, really need to build that security into the programs and the process itself. Now, when I say creators, there's a whole bunch of different types of creators. It's not just the developer, the developers of software and hardware, or just the creator of ideas. So again, there's a different way of coming into cyber. You don't have to be, but you can be the programmers who create the software. And that really goes to that point where if they create it securely or they have security in mind, yes, you build it today, tomorrow somebody's going to find a vulnerability that we didn't know existed. So then we have to go back and fix it. But that's why it's always this chasing cat and mouse. How do we get one to the other? So hardware engineers are out there enhancing the performance of what we actually can do with the chips. Quantum computing is coming. All these exciting things to speed up, make it faster. I mean, look at how small your phone could go now. Now they're talking about flip phones and other things. All that hardware engineering is also in cybersecurity, especially when we have to take in mind that we have to build it securely from the bottom up. And then the creators of the software to monitor the programs that were written by other people. Again, this is another on top of idea thing. Hey, I really want to monitor this network that's flowing between here and here because I think that there's an attack. How do you detect that? How do you display that? How do you make that available for other people to see? And then applications or apps to enable transactions. There's a ton of applications out on the internet and they're free, but let's again take our data care lens on and say, are they really free? or are they getting my data? What are they doing with my data? And how are they protecting my data? And that protecting your data becomes cybersecurity. And that's where and how people can get involved in cybersecurity that might not be the programmer or the developer or the engineer, but they can be that policymaker. They can be that person that says, no, you need to develop it in a way that my information is protected. And then there's network architect. I might never be able to code a thing in the world, but if I know that this bit does A plus B and this bit does C plus D, and I want to get through the entire alphabet, I can figure out how to put that together in the best way. So those are the putting IT or putting it all together is also, and especially in a secure way, is also a career path. Again, it's not all about that coding and that deep idea of being able to see how the bits and bytes and seeing the red dress in the, the matrix code. But these are the creators of it. And then again, the policies and procedures to keep us all safe. Those also, whether it's from a legal point of view, from a political point of view, those also are important in cybersecurity. And there are careers that you can go into. And then finally, this is the biggest bucket. If you want to get into cybersecurity, you really be a good user. You need to get certified in using products. There's a wealth of information out there regarding how to get certified security professionals, certified just even in IT, understanding the basic building blocks on how the network is even designed and how it works and how the information flows from you to your bank or how it flows from you to your friends. All of that information is so important to understand before you build and get to cybersecurity necessarily. So if people ask me, how do I get into cybersecurity? I would say, look at those certifications to be getting using the software, because that's where the bread and butter at the end of the day is. I can build software that's the most secure thing in the world, but if people can't use it, they're not going to use it. So it's this really good balance between being able to use software or hardware and then be able to have an opinion, whether it's good or bad, or if the user interface could be better, or if you feel like you're hitting those blind spots. Okay, I've got A and C, but I need a product that helps me see B. Then as an operator, you really start to learn that. And then one really wonderful aspect of being in cybersecurity is you can come in entry level and you can build your skills as you're working, and you become an expert by doing the job that you're hired to do. Unlike a nurse who, if she goes into being a nurse, there's still a lot of study in order to become a doctor. But cyber's not that way. If you kind of come in entry level and you're diligent and you care about what you're doing and what you're working and how things work together, you can actually build your own career based on your experience. And that's just a wonderful ability to be able to open the aperture of what you're interested in before you know what you're interested in. I hope that makes sense. So I love the idea of being in cybersecurity because it is so diverse. You could do forensics. Again, you could do offense, you could do defense, you can do incident response. There's so many different ways that you can participate that it's not just one single thing, and it's not really ever boring. I know people wish it was more boring, but it really isn't.
Hey, Cyndi, we have a couple of questions. If you don't mind me asking as you go along. We have, what career paths are best for a person who does not code very well?
It depends. Again, let me get back to this last piece that I was going to talk about, and it's called an educator. Now, an educator is not just a teacher. And my ability of saying an educator is the ability to communicate the why. Cybersecurity is very complicated. There's so many dynamics of here and there. But if you're a salesperson, if you really like people and you like to be able to interact with people, being able to inform people why you need security and specifically your type of security is very vitally important, especially to small companies who are chasing potential nation states coming after and trying to get to their information. So the educator could be the salesperson. So that's one career path. Marketing. If you are visually gifted and you can visualize complicated ideas, that's huge. And again, you still need to understand how and the why to be able to then visual or articulate these complicated ideas. And if you're a great writer, one of the big things that is being sought out there is those technical writers who can actually translate the technical into workable. I mean, how many times have you tried to read the book or the directions and totally not understand what that is? And even marketing wise, visualize and technical writing, those together, it is a very complicated, it's an awesome way to get into the industry again and provide that piece. Another thing is game developers. If you really look at the way that society's going, we're going to need to provide different ways to learn. And if you can develop a game to learn cybersecurity, I think we're going to be a lot more successful to get people to be personally responsible for what they do on the internet and how they provide their own protection and service. And so I see those game developers. And if you talk about game developers all over again, you've got arts, you've got the visual art, you've got the linguist arts of how all of that comes together to be able to train. And then policymaker, if you're really great being a lawyer and arguing and making those pieces, we need policymakers. We need people to understand and articulate the why that we should do things in a way. And I argue again that if we say it's data care and not necessarily cybersecurity, the why and how to protect data, it doesn't matter what technical piece is behind that data, whether it's taking data, storing data. And if we put the wrappers around the data itself in a policy and political way, then it's a lot easier of a conversation, again, to the public. And we need those translators to be able to make that. And then, of course, teachers and educators in school. But putting all of these different pathways together, it helps you understand why educating in cybersecurity is so difficult, because there is no simple one path. There's not this is how you become a doctor, XYZ. There's many different paths, and we need many different thought processes. For instance, if you go into finance, my chief director of engineering had a finance degree. He didn't have an engineering degree. He didn't have a computer degree, but he had a finance degree, and he self-taught himself regarding the why computer security was so important. And he learned how to do the other aspects of doing that. So again, it's the angle you come at it that can be very beneficial, because there is no one person who does all cybersecurity. It's a team sport. It's up and down the aisle. It's way beyond just a single thing. And then, so that kind of gets to this is understanding your why. There's also various sizes of companies and opportunities. Do you want to work for somebody who has direct access to help small businesses and friends, or maybe yourself? Maybe that's a smaller organization. What that means is you might have to do more of all of the different things, a jack of all trades, so to speak, in order to supply the security. Or if you work for a larger audience, whether you work for the federal government or you work for Google or you work for, Citibank, that type of path is more for helping other companies. So you'll be working within a team. You might have a much smaller, concentrated, very pointed task to do and be a little bit more expert in a particular field versus a jack of all trade. But again, both of these paths are great, because the exposure you have, you will then see the need and understand your why you do this in the career. And then, there's several resources on trying to figure out what your path is. Obviously, the Cyber Center for Education and Innovation has career search, and there's career advice in cybersecurity. There's a lot of information out there with respect to how to slice and dice the cybersecurity pathway for yourself. My intent was, again, to say that you don't have to be technical in order to be cybersecurity, or you don't have to be a programmer. I programmed in 1992 Fortran and Pascal, and these are dead languages, but they had their purpose. So one of the things everybody, and I'm talking about everybody, whether you're interested in cybersecurity or not, one, you should get trained in a language so that you understand when people say computer language, what that means, whether it's how to code, a web site, or if you go to Python, there's Codecademy is free programming. But the other thing is chase down and find cybersecurity class, the understanding the fundamentals of how the internet works, why it works, how it interacts, how people get in, what does a vulnerability actually mean? All of these things are so important because the internet's not going away. The complication's not going away. We have our refrigerators connected to the internet. We have our cars potentially driving themselves. There's only going to be more and more of this technology coming through, and it's so important and imperative to get yourself educated, to be in the conversation, and then be able to apply how and why you want to get into the cybersecurity area and arena. And then, so I was curious if there's any questions based on that presentation.
What is a typical day in the life of a cyber professional?
That's a very different question. Again, if you're a security operations center, so you're an operator where you're operating the security software either for your network or for your company, there's a potential that you have a flood of images in front of you and you have red bells and you watch the graphs of your network. That could be the day. It's never the same. It is never the same. The network is never the same. You want it to be boring, but it's likely not. If you're on the developing side where you're a creator, it's likely that there may be a new thing found, either a new vulnerability found, a new attack. And so you're constantly chasing up with the innovation of the potential bad guys in order to solve that, provide a solution for people to get beyond that today's 0-day issue. If you're an educator, again, the innovation and technology is moving so fast that it's nearly impossible to sit still long enough to then be able to articulate to teach. And then in my area right now, we invest in cybersecurity companies and the technology and identifying the new things that are coming and vetting to see if that is something the public or the business community is going to want to buy or even help to formulate the best way to develop that. And user interfaces are totally all the game from a point of view of ability to use, because security and IT in an organization has historically been fighting because you want access to all of this, again, wonderful benefit of the internet, but then you're fighting constantly with doing it securely or protecting your data or protecting that issue. So I think one of the most exciting things is that it's never the same day. It is similar from a point of view of day to day that I'm going to go look at these logs, I'm going to find this. But when you find an intrusion, then it's all hands on deck. You pull people from IT, you pull people from HR, you pull people from policy, legal, everywhere. And it really becomes a real collaborative exposure to different people that you might not normally get to. So you never want an intrusion, but you also want to be able to actively defend against it and work to solve the solution. So it's a constant, exciting industry to be in. And the benefit is you get to choose which ways you kind of go. Like I said in the beginning, if you're really good at looking at data and picking apart and seeing around the corners that don't, you can't, there's no light around that corner, but if you can see around that corner and understand what the next step is, you're going to then be able to pull that thread and become maybe a incident response, then maybe go into penetration testing, and then maybe go into policy writing, because you'll understand how the attacker is trying to get into the network. And that's valuable. That's where you really become the cybersecurity expert, to get that value.
Excellent answer. Thank you, Cyndi. We have another question that says, you spoke earlier about some forms of unauthorized access of networks, but could you elaborate on the ethical ways that are required for the greater good?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. And that's what the industry has come to. Prior to probably mid 2000s, there was a real big push or question on ethical hacking, and the idea that any hacking was bad and needed to be stopped. And the conversation luckily happened saying, yes, but if I don't see my own vulnerabilities, how am I supposed to protect against those? And so this ethical hacking kind of concept came up because we had really great, brilliant minds could see around 4 different corners, and they would be able to get into somebody else's network. And from a point of view, they weren't doing it in a nefarious way. They were doing it to prove a point that you are vulnerable. And sometimes that's really what it takes to get somebody to either invest in security or promote security, is to be that victim. But if you're the victim in a safe way, that's much better than being a victim in a criminal way. And so ethical hacking really is that. Penetration test is another great asset in the cybersecurity world. But one of the reasons that became so prominent is because we all of a sudden had these regulations, compliance regulations. In the 90s and early 2000s, credit cards and financial information was getting stolen left and right. So finally, the finance area came up with PCI. So publicly, oh gosh, Mark, help me out on that one. You get used to all these acronyms, you forget what they actually mean.
PCI. You got me there too.
Okay. But you're compliant,
right?
With the finance and the financial ability to transact financially on the internet. You have put all of these pieces and governances in place in order to get that certification. So in general, that's why it kind of ethical hacking is a necessity, because you have to be able to know your own vulnerabilities. Because again, cybersecurity is never done.
Yeah. I have another question. What is the future of this field?
Oh, this future is so exciting. Again, I'm really pushing on the data care side of things a little bit more, because when you put data care under the cybersecurity under a data care umbrella, you pull in the Facebooks, the Amazons, the other people who have your data, and the data science is another way that you would be woefully beneficial to cybersecurity, because understanding what people do with your data, how they can do with your data, but more specifically, what your data is actually showing, because accumulated, one point of data is not that interesting, but accumulated data is very interesting. And so data science is going to be interesting. Like I said before, quantum computing is coming up. So talk about no lag on any of the gamings that you do, but no lag on a lot of different things. And then 5G is going to change how we interact with each other. And again, if we continue to innovate without security in mind, we're only going to keep opening up more and more opportunity in order to have to plug those security plugs. So cybersecurity is definitely a field that's going to be forever growing, and hopefully integrating more into the society is a necessity and not an afterthought.
Excellent. And oh, by the way, we have one of our anonymous attendees said that PCI is payment card industry.
Thank you.
So yay. Thank you for our folks who are listening in. And we have one last question here for you. What are the best and most challenging parts of the job?
I'm going to go with the best part first.
Okay.
The best part for me is It's the people. It's the amount of care and the ability or just the veracity of duty to do and defend and to produce something that is going to protect somebody else. So again, coming out of it being an engineer and looking into cybersecurity, I look around and the people who are in it are phenomenal people. And even if we compete, we're all on the same team. So we're all on that defend the companies, defend the public, defend the country. We're all on the same team, even if we are competing against each other. And that's just the brilliant, most wonderful thing. The challenge, I definitely think, is getting the public to understand that this is important. It shouldn't be an afterthought. It needs to be integrated and understood into it. And because it's moving so fast, the innovation, keeping up with that, and then trying to train the next generation on the thing we just started to understand that moved and now is moving into some other area, it's going to be constant. And the next generation is going to have to do a lot of self-turning and self-learning. And how do we get the public to do that and not be overwhelmed?
That is a phenomenal challenge, Cyndi, and I share that and join you in that concern. We've got a lot of opportunities to inform, and that's what this session has done, and we really appreciate it. We have one question just popped in. And we do have time for that. Could you elaborate on the operator side of things, like the certifications and what kind of companies have a lot of people in that career?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I'm not an expert in the best way of doing that. And that's why the Center for Cyber Excellence and Innovation, their Cybrary is another free online cyber library, so to speak, in order to enable you to delve in for free what aspects of cyber you might want to go into. And again, when I say certifications, don't think of certification as I take a week class and I can pass it. Some of these are month-long study certifications, sometimes even a couple years to culminate to get underneath the cyber certification. And again, it's really, you have to answer that why and who. Why are you doing this and who do you want to work for? Because I would hate to say, do this certification, because that might not set you up for the success that you will want. And that's why there's so many resources. Unfortunately, there is no one path. And again, you have to answer your own piece on that. But one of the slides I did have, it was a great place in the presentation as far as security advice, security career advice. It gave you the spectrum of if you're talking about wanting to be an operator, in what parts of the operation that you want to be in. There's certifications for all of those. If you want to be at the front end, if you want to be setting up and operating, if you want to be in the middle end where you want to be monitoring and taking action, if you want to be on the back end where it's more forensics and incident response. So there's a whole wealth of ability to hit those, and there's many certifications on any end of it on either side.
Well, thank you very much, Cyndi. That was great insight. We had a lot of great questions on this session, and I really appreciate everybody's contributing to the conversation. And on behalf of the National Cryptologic Museum Foundation, thank you, Cyndi, for a great way to open up our week. We really appreciate it. And for everyone who attended today, thank you very much. And be sure to tune in for the rest of the week. We have some great speakers that you may want to take advantage of as well. So, Cyndi, any closing remarks?
No, thank you very much for having me. And like you said before, we're very, Gula Tech Adventures was listed as an adventure because that's how we see this industry. And the workforce is just going to be amazing and blow our minds with respect to what they're going to be able to do than even what we've done. And that's so encouraging. I want to see so many people push beyond what we've even done to this point. And I look forward to everybody getting in different ways.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Cyndi. And thank you, everybody. Have a great day.